It's been a fair while since I posted my first video on this channel, which was a review of the Carvin Legacy 3. I've done a lot of videos since then, which you should totally check out on my channel, but I wanted to do an updated version of that first video based on some of the feedback that I got. I'd like to give you more of an insight into what the Carvin Legacy sounds like, and a bit more of an idea of the kind of gear that I'm using with it. Right, so this house is normally very tidy, but I can make anywhere look like a shit tip with all my gear, to be fair. So this is my pedal board, this is what I've got on the front of the amp. People, they get very suspicious about what you might be running in front of your amp to make it sound better than it really is. I don't know why people think I'd be doing that, because I don't get paid by Carvin. I'm not sponsored, I'm just a bloke who bought a Carvin. So this is my pedal board, as I say, and you'll be thinking, that looks like a lot of shit on there. I don't even know what the amp's going to sound like with all that shit, but it's really not that complicated. So this big bit in the middle, this is just a pedal switcher. It's called a Gig Rig G2, and all it does is switches around the pedals that are all plugged into the board here, you can see. And it decides which ones are on at any one time to save me doing a tap dance, because nobody... Ooh, put my hand in front of the camera there, that was good, wasn't it? It saves me doing a tap dance. So at the moment I have 14 set as my tuner, my chord tuner, which is there. And you can say if I click 1, that comes up with a certain group of pedals, and 2 and 3 and all the rest of it. So they can have them set as you want with quite a few banks, and it's quite a complicated bit of gear really, but I don't really use it in a very complicated way. I could do more with it, but I can't be asked to read the manual. So this isn't going to change the sound. The only way that it does very slightly change the sound, just for accuracy's sake, is the gain. So there's a post gain here and a pre-gain there. And obviously if you're putting a bit of a boosted signal into the amp through anything that's in front of it, even if it is just a switching pedal, it will change the sound a little bit. But it's nothing major, it's not changing the EQ or out like that, it's just shoving a bit of gain into the signal path, depending on what I've got. And if you didn't have any on, because this is the gateway to your sound, if you had your gain down at 0, you wouldn't have a signal, because I'm running things through the effects loop, and that's the way it works. So try not to complain about that too much, people in the comments who get upset about things like that. So we'll go around my pedals now. That's my overdrive. I used that in the last video. That's just me Gemini overdrive. I only really use the green side, which is the overdrive side. That's the distortion side. Don't really use it, to be honest, because I use that as what the red side would do. That's me Black Star distortion, Valve distortion, use that for kind of metal tones, Megadeth, that kind of stuff when I'm playing that. I've done a review on that as well. It's a great pedal, but it's off. You will notice that light is not on, because I'm not using it today. We're just using the Carvin. I'm not looking at the super crazy metal Black Star tones today, so you don't have to worry about that one. That is not in the equation. MXR Phaser, Phase 90 there, the Van Halen Special Edition. Ooh, lovely. And I just used that on some rhythm tones. It is actually a very high gain sound that I use it on, but I roll off the volume because I like how the Carvin reacts to that, and I'll give you an idea of that later. There's an Analog Man chorus, use that for cleans. There's my Korg tuner. There's my Dig Strymon, that's digital delay, it's a dual delay. Brilliant pedal, probably my favourite of the lot, it's fantastic. If you manage to try one or you want to get a delay, just get one of them, the mint. A lot of Strymon stuff is mint, to be fair. But I use that pretty much all the time, and I will today. And there's my MXR Dynacomp compressor, which I just use for my cleans. Not using these two today, but the wah is always in the signal path. That doesn't actually go through the G2, that just, my guitar just goes straight into there. And the whammy, which I'm not using either. So, we'll go over to the amp. And I'll show you what we've got on the old settings and that. Mic wise, I'm using a Sennheiser E906, which is a classic guitar miking, amping, miking, you know what I'm saying. I don't know what just happened there, I think I clicked something on my phone. Right, so this is my EQ that I'm using. It's not much different from last time. I think I brought the bass down a little bit. Reverb on, as usual, for a bit of space. I usually keep it around 7. So just take a, I don't know, a mental image of that, get an idea of my EQ. And if you've got one, you can mirror it or whatever and see if you like it, tweak it to your own preference. Now, there was a fella in comments section who was having a pop at me saying, I came here so I could hear the lead tone on the amp. You didn't show me it because you didn't show me channel 3. Well, channel 2 and channel 3 are the same, dickhead. Look, the EQ is the same for both channels. The only difference is it can be made in presence, drive and volume. So your treble, mid and bass have to be the same across the two. You can have a gain boost. You can see the switch there, which I do use for channel 3. But say the only difference is the gain, the presence and the volume. You can make them sound identical if you want. I don't really see the point in that, so I personally have them set a bit differently on the presence. I mean, I can see why you would want them the same if you just wanted, say, a rhythm tone that had the same amount of gain as your lead tone with only a volume difference. You could do that because they've got separate volume controls, for example. But I prefer to have less gain on my rhythm channel anyway. So what I tend to do is use channel 2 with the drive as it is there for some rhythm tones, and I have 2 lead tones. I'll put in my overdrive on channel 2 for a Vi-ish creamy lead tone, and I'll use channel 3 when I want something a bit harsher, but not Megadeth harsh. Something like Joe Satriani's tone tends to be a bit harsher than Steve Vai's tone. So 3 for me is kind of my surfing with the alien kind of a tone, if you like. So that's an idea of what you can do with it. And presence wise, for me, the sweet spot on this amp for presence is between 6 and 8. Anything below it, it sounds a bit too muddy. It sounds like your amp's in a nearby field to me. And if you have it over that 8 mark, it gets a bit too brittle, a bit too in your face, and it cuts your head off. So that's why on channel 2 I have it at 7, on channel 3 I have it at 8. It's actually just after 7 on channel 2. And you might think that that would make no difference when you've got less than 1 number difference between the presence, but trust me, it makes a massive difference. This is a very responsive amp, and you want to be accurate and kind of know what you're doing when you are dialing stuff in. Experiment with it and get an idea of what everything does, because it will do as you tell it to. It's not one of these amps where you can turn the dial all the way around and now it happens. It's not one of them amps at all. So first up, for cleans, number 1, in the chain we've got the MXR compressor, the Strymon delay and the Analog Man chorus. And on the amp, the EQ as you saw it earlier with the reverb turned on. There you go. Now that can't all be given to the amp as a good job. This guitar's amazing, the resonance is great, and I'm using bare knuckle nail bomb pickups, so you know, bear that in mind for that particular clean tone. If you're trying to recreate it with that kind of an EQ, some chorus and some delay, you'll approximate, you'll get close, but there are so many variables that it would be difficult to get it exact. And obviously one of the big variables is your axe, so you've got to change other variables that are controllable. If you want to use your axe, or you don't want to get a different guitar and whatever, you've got to change whatever you can change, whether that's EQ, pedals, whatever, to try and achieve the tone that you're looking for. So, number 2, let's get some overdrive kicked in. Yeah, that noise on the amp kick in there, there's a lot of gain. I was considering putting a noise gate on the board, but I've got an MXR noise gate and I've used other ones as well, and I can't find one that don't suck the tone like a bitch, so I'm not going to use one. I can't be doing with it. What's the point in making your tone as you want it and then ruining it with a noise gate? I'd rather sort it out by manipulating the volume on my guitar, which is what I do. Speaking of which, this overdrive is kicked in, hence the noise. And you're thinking, Craig, why have we gone from a clean tone to what sounds like a lead tone? You know, the dirty channel on your amp, the overdrive pedal on top of it. To which my answer would be, it's volume manipulation on the guitar. My rhythm tone uses this setup, dirty channel on the amp with overdrive pedal, but with the volume on the guitar knocked right down. It cuts out all the noise, and the way that this combination reacts to volume manipulation is very different to if it's just a load of gain on the amp, and I'll show you that later. Depends on your pickups as well, and it just works for me, but I'll show you that. So we've got, for this channel, for this demo, the overdrive, the Strymon dig, and the reverb on the amp, and that's it. It's time for some rhythm tones. So as I said, we've got the amp on the dirty channel, channel 2, we've got my overdrive pedal engaged, and this guitar has got the bare knuckle nail bombs in with Alnico magnets as opposed to ceramic magnets. So in passive pickup world, ceramic magnets are more powerful, they have a higher output. Alnico are weaker and have a lower output, and they have different characteristics. Alnico pickups have a really good dynamic range, the pick attack is very defined, etc, etc. They also react very well and quite gradually to being cleaned up on the volume, which I will demonstrate now. So we have nothing on the volume. I'm going to show you how little I'm going to tweak this. That's the amount that I'm going to need for my rhythm tone. It's tiny movement. Punchy, crunchy, no need to worry about noise. There's a bit of fizz on the amp, but it's not going to kill anyone. I like this tone for this kind of stuff. Yeah, Holy Diver. All those kinds of hard rock, classic metal kind of riffs. If you knock it up from there up to there, see we've got a bit more oomph to the sound. The lower EQs come in. As I said, this kind of acts as a bit of a high pass filter. The more volume you put on, the more of your bass and low mids are injected back into the mix. So that was kind of halfway. And the Carvin has got to be credited for that, because this is, some people call it Vi's hidden feature on the Legacies, is that they clean up really well on the distorted channels. These pickups won't do it on their own, they just have quite a good synergy. So full volume. Suitable for a lead tone, all the EQs are in, it's a big fat sound, it's a bit woollier, and I like that gradient that you get going up there. So that's an example of what I'm doing with channel 2. This amp is not very forgiving with mistakes. They're very clear when you make them, just like everything on the amp is very clear. It's got great definition and clarity, but for that you pay the price of it being a difficult amp to play. So although on a full volume with all of what I've explained with channel 2 and the overdrive, it's got a very liquid sound, it never feels very liquid to play, if that makes sense. Some amps are easier to play than this one, but the reward is greater in my opinion. I'll play a bit more lead just to try and demonstrate how clear and well defined each note is, and how good the note separation is despite the amp being loaded with gain and distortion. So, moving on to number 3, or number 9, as I have it set up. Are you thinking, Craig, why is there so much noise? Turn it down, dude. So I just got rid of that noise there so you can hear me. I'd have to shout. There's a lot of gain on there, so there's going to be a lot of noise. The noise isn't present when you're playing, it isn't present when you knock down the volume on your guitar. So, this channel, how I have this set up, just in case you can't imagine it, it's channel 3 with a gain boost on. So I'll just show you that on the amp now. So you can see that the lights have changed, which is pretty cool. It's got a cool little feature on it. There are green, yellow and red LED lights. And I have this channel set to yellow. So we've got channel 3 engaged and the gain boost engaged there, which you can see. So, and you saw that the presence was a bit higher as well. And as I said before, the way that different setups of distortion react to volume manipulation on the guitar, it varies massively. How this reacts to volume manipulation, all the gain being on the amp, seems to be more linear, in the sense of that the EQ stays the same but the gain comes down, whereas on the last example with the overdrive and the gain on the amp, the EQ seems to roll off with a high pass filter almost, so the high frequencies remain. It's a bit more sweet and bright as you roll off the volume, and the gain comes down, and when you roll it back up, all the frequencies kick back in, you've got a bit more punch and a bit more roundness and all the rest of it. So they do react differently, and I use them for different things, obviously. So for this channel, the only pedals we've got engaged, well, the only pedal we've got engaged is the Strymon delay, and sometimes I have the phaser in on this one as well, so I'll show you that. I think the phaser sounds best on this kind of a distorted channel. So now we've got the third channel on the amp with the gain boost and the phaser on. I'll bring the volume up gradually as I play. same channel with the same gain boost without the phaser, because you know that somebody's going to complain about that.